It's been 2 years since the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan after the disastrous withdrawal by the Biden administration. The Taliban government itself is not formally recognized by any country in the world, as we know. And joining us this morning to discuss, Senior Fellow at Defense Priorities and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel. Always great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me back, Jan.
Since no country recognizes the Taliban rule, there's very little engagement with them globally. So what does the country look like today? Where is it headed?
Yeah, there's in some ways a very stark difference from what it was when we were there. In other ways, it's kind of the same. And the first thing right off the bat is that the levels of violence are dramatically down. And that stands to reason because, there's no more combat. There's no more conflict between the Taliban and the international community. There still is a little bit with ISIS. They have a band there that they have some engagement, but it's pretty small and it doesn't seem to affect much of the population. But on the economic side, it's near disaster. It's worse for everybody than it was during the time when the United States was there, and the people are struggling really just for basic needs. 65, I believe, % of the country is in dire need of food aid.
Also, we're seeing so many rights that have been stripped from women, from girls, ethnic, religious, and other minorities. They've been hit the hardest in the Taliban rule. Tell us what's happening as a result of those rights being stripped from certain groups.
Yeah, that's the most heartbreaking part. It was also the most expected and predictable. In the initial days after the Taliban took over in 2021, they actually said they were going to moderate from their previous rule, and they actually allowed women to continue working in several different areas. And over time, that is slowly stripped out until even within the recent month or so, that some of the last provisions were imposed a ban on them to where they have even less. And women were allowed in school for a good bit of time, but now then up till the 6th grade, they're still allowed to go to school up to the 6th grade, but no longer beyond that. And of course, that's just a terrible situation that especially many of the women who were, such pioneers in Afghanistan to try to rally for their rights have now, are very heartbroken.
Does the Taliban face any significant opposition that could topple them?
No, they really don't. They have what's effectively a theocratic dictatorship. I mean, that's just the truth of it. There is no opposition. It's illegal to have any kind of even disagreement with the Taliban. If they do, they'll be jailed. So there are no political parties of any sort there. There is just the one-man Taliban rule and their version of the Sharia law from the Islam.
Yeah, and Lieutenant Colonel, a lot of service members, especially those who served in Afghanistan, a lot of Americans still furious with how we pulled out of that country. We lost 13 soldiers. What is morale like today in the military, and what needs to be done to instill more honor and more trust with those who go into battle risking their own lives for Americans?
Well, Jan, right off the top of the bat is be honest. That was remains among some of the biggest problems for military-age males in the United States that want to serve. And was a big problem during the time of the whole 20-year war, both in the civilian senior ranks and in the military senior ranks, where we were repeatedly told things were getting better, that we're winning the war, that the Taliban is on the way down. And we know, we saw it graphically depicted 2 years ago, that none of that was ever true, as many people, like some of the things I said over those years exposed that. But the troops, we see that kind of thing, and they just want people to be honest with them. And you see it reflected in our recruiting right now. It's in the toilet. It's just going down because the lack of trust, even among the American populations, based on recent polling, shows that there's a lower trust in the senior military leaders. And a big part of that, is they just don't believe what they're being told, and that's what needs to change.
So what do you see for the future then of our defense systems in our military?
Well, look, there's going to have to be some changes. We can't maintain this. We can't continue to have these huge shortfalls across the board in recruiting. So, I know that there have been and still remain some really good leaders, and we're going to have to see them rise higher, and there's going to have to be some changes at the top. And I think just pragmatically, they're going to have to recognize that what they've been doing hasn't working, and it's time to do the right thing across the board and just, again, be honest.
Retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Jan.
you and your service to our country, by the way. Thank
you.